This is your car.
Welcome back. Today we're at IAA in Los Angeles, not far from where they filmed the first Fast and the Furious. So it should come as no surprise that we're going to see a couple very, very famous cars today.
Oh man,
iconic.
What do you think's under the hood, Carrington?
At least 100 grand.
Jesse, don't do it.
They did this much quicker in the movies.
Got it.
That's not 100 grand.
Oh, that is clean,
Super
though.
clean though. Super clean. Wow. That might be the nicest valve cover I've ever seen on one of these. What is the mileage on this thing? 67,000 miles and it still looks like this. Gotta love California, right?
And it's an 08, which is second to last year that they made these.
Yep.
Drive-by-wire, some couple year only pieces on this car that are special.
Speaking of special, that OEM spoiler. It might not quite be worth 100 grand, but those are super expensive these days. Any OEM body piece that you can get, especially the side strakes, which unfortunately this car does not have, is super expensive. Dawn, I need you to stop worrying about the interior and come back here. Just found something special.
Well, you already talked about that. The exhaust, maybe?
The exhaust.
Is that a high power?
It's HKS.
Oh, man.
They're really playing out the whole Fast and the Furious thing out here for
They're
sure.
doing it right.
You can't beat HKS though. It's the best sounding exhaust for S2000 ever made. That's a fact, not an opinion, just so we're on the same page. Did you find anything good in the interior?
I don't know that these are not reupholstered seats. They have red stitching on them. And this doesn't look like the factory. I thought this was all one piece.
I would tend to agree. I have not seen red stitched OEM stuff in this ever.
The inserts to me look like the OEM inserts, and you can see a little bit of a color difference here where I think that the perimeters on these seats were redone, which is not completely uncommon, and I think it looks really, really good.
It really does.
This interior is clean like you would expect from a car with this mileage. It does have the black AP2 center console.
Should we tell them what it's worth? Or should we just kind of leave them hanging?
I'll let you do the honors on that one, Carrington.
As far as center consoles go in S2000s, this is the top dog. AP1 center console these days, 200 bucks. AP2 center console with silver trim is still like $750. This guy here is approaching $1,000. Realistically, in the past 2 years, everything has went absolutely nuts on these cars value-wise. Gauge cluster, almost $1,000. This 08 steering wheel airbag, along with the AP2 steering wheel there, massive money, $750. Even though they're barely different from the AP1s, the only difference being this tweeter hole right here. These door panels, massive money, 500 bucks. Honestly, we might pull even a little premium because they're so nice. We sell ones that aren't even in that great a shape for $500 and they sell almost immediately. So for as clean as the interior is, one thing that's not super clean, this front end. Obviously, I should not be able to see right through there to the ground, so that's a problem.
The whole bottom of the radiator is completely pushed back. This is supposed to be vertical on this car, and the bottom is at least a foot back.
You sure it's not a V-mount?
That's almost what it looks like. I'm not seeing any damage to the front of the subframe that I can tell right now, but that whole lower support structure on this car is completely destroyed, which is a problem on S2000s because even non-wrecked cars, people make the mistake of jacking from that point or using it to get the car off the ground, and it will completely twist the front end out of sorts and mess up the alignment of the bumper, the headlights, the fender, the hood.
Well, speaking of the alignment of the front end on this one, it doesn't look too bad. Over there obviously has its issues, but if we're looking here, though the paint doesn't match great, that alignment is still pretty much on. This headlight sits in a little further than it should, but as far as I'm concerned, if the damage is all isolated up there, we're not in a bad spot. So let's check these gaps. That is pretty flawless, though the upper part of the fender sits in a little further than it should, and the bottom sits out a little further. What do we got on this side? How's it looking?
The fender is definitely pushed back, but obviously this is the side that took the majority of the impact. The door up here to the windshield looks okay. I think that this thing basically needs just an entire front end, which is not overly uncommon for accident S2000s to need a front cut and then fenders, bumper, hood. It's overall a relatively easy fix, even with what you have here.
The good news with this one compared to some of the other S2000s we see at auction, if you go through the trouble of fixing this, doing the front end, doing everything you need to do to get this back where it was, you're going to be left with an insanely clean product. So though it's definitely not going to be super cheap or super easy, being that you probably have some framework to do up there, at least in this case I think the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. You're obviously going to need to replace a wheel, that entire front passenger suspension corner, but coming towards the back of the car, everything is just so nice. This is one of those rebuilds that I love where you only have to pay attention to one area of the car.
It has like no oil.
So she a little low on oil?
She is, and that is of concern given the impact here.
It is.
I wonder if there is more damage than we are seeing up front underneath with the oil pan.
Well, I'll let you lay on this dirty ground and tell us.
You didn't bring your yoga mat, Carrington?
Safe to say we're gonna have to settle for commentary because there's not a chance the camera's getting under there.
I can't see actual damage to the oil pan, but the bottom of the oil pan does look wet, like it is leaking from somewhere under there.
So you're telling me that this might not be quite as easy and simple as we originally thought? Possibly.
Correct. I think you're right. I think there might be more here than it appears from the top side of this car.
Well, you know what they say about this.
Too soon, Junior.
The good news is it does not appear that they started the car here. I think they recognize the amount of undercarriage damage, and there is no start video on this car. It was not started after the accident.
Which, as you might imagine, is very important on a car that seemingly doesn't have enough oil in it. One of the scariest things we deal with at salvage auction across the board is if we have a car with a damaged oil pan that simply doesn't have oil in it because the oil cooler was ripped off. Did anybody start it? Did they let it run unknowingly at the auction lot? Fortunately, in the case of this S2000, it does not appear so.
So it doesn't look like a $100,000 fix, but you are gonna have to tackle some mechanical repairs, frame repairs, and cosmetic repairs, and unfortunately we are not going to get to hear that beautiful HKS exhaust hum.
We have a massive amount of ground to cover, so we're going to keep it moving. We will leave this S2000 on a positive note, however. It is a Honda after all. It might have just burned a couple quarts of oil, and that oil pan might be perfectly intact. I know this isn't technically Don's car, but I'd like to think if Fast and the Furious 1 came out in 2022, he might be driving a Hellcat.
It is a supercharged Mopar, it's just a more modern version of it.
Kind of better looking too, right?
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
Hold on now.
Hey, I retract my previous statement.
Well, it's supposed to be a supercharged Mopar.
Is this Dodge's new direct injection? Do we not know about this?
Jesus Christ.
More importantly, is that the car the pizza boy drives?
What the hell's going on around here? Street's closed, pizza boy. Find another way home.
I don't even know what this is. A Sunbird LE? Pontiac Sunbird, okay.
This thing is really clean.
I was about to say the same thing. This does not look right. This doesn't look right at all. This thing is obnoxiously clean. Holy crap.
Wow.
All right, this is weird. There's no good reason the Pontiac Sunbird should be in this video, but now I feel like we have to acknowledge how clean this car is. This is unreal. Look at the black trim. What is going on with this?
This is the heaviest hood I've ever felt.
So use a little bit of that Fast and Furious carbon fiber?
It's still super clean under the hood though.
All right, so who in LA is like a Sunbird enthusiast? Because obviously this car was like hardcore garage kept. Look at these headlights. This is very odd. This is definitely a salvage auction video first. I don't think I've ever had a car you guys probably cared about less, but I hope you guys can appreciate how clean this is. Seriously, like the black trim there. That's unreal. There's a little bit of damage back there you gotta fix up, but I can only imagine the person that wrecked this or, you know, got hit, however it may have been destroyed, they were probably devastated.
If you really want to though, you can buy this thing, drag it out of this lot, and be delivering pizzas in it that night.
And this is one of the special cars we came for today. I know it's been 20 some years since the movie. They have changed a few things on the car. Namely, it's painted white now with pink stripes. Otherwise, it's almost identical to how it looked 20 years ago when the movie came out. They even left the original hood pins in it. From what I understand, they also had to remove the blower due to new California emissions requirements. Otherwise, still a legendary car. And I'm glad to see it still retains some of the stickers from the original car in the movie. It's also really, really unique and cool to see that they left some of the original filming equipment on it. Of course, the GoPro mount is facing backwards for when it drugged that Supra. Which, as you guys already know, we're gonna see later in the video. One other thing they've changed over the years, I guess as the car's changed hands a couple of times through Barrett Jackson and other exclusive auctions, the new owner decided at some point to go ahead and throw their Instagram on it and pull Dom's Instagram off.
It does look like they upgraded the brakes. With these 6 pistons on it, this thing would have definitely been able to stop before running into that stupid box truck.
I guess with all the changes, is this what you would consider a resto mod?
I think that's the best description. It looks like they've also added some carbon fiber additions to the car.
Beautiful. So you can see where the inspiration came from with the popularity of the new Dodges, the Hellcats. They really went all out to make this thing look as new and updated as possible. Which honestly, guys, after 20 years, I mean, a 70 Challenger, it's cool and all, but you need to update it. You need to keep it fresh. You need to do something with it so it's not just looking like some old piece of junk Dodge. Now, if there's one part of this restoration that I'm not psyched about, it's this right here. The fact that they took that blower off of it. I get it, it's 2022, there's all kinds of new environmental regulations. It's a Tesla world after all, but I do wish it was still the good old days where they could have left the blower sticking out of the hood of this. Because of all those changes, you now have this carb sticker on there. I think it's safe to say that wasn't on there when they filmed originally.
We all saw the accident in the movie. It does look like they did a really great job of repairing this car so that it could be used in some more modern automotive activities.
Dalt, you're right. I overlooked these. It's such a nice, subtle install that I didn't even pay attention to the fact that they were there. It is cool to see that they're keeping up with the times.
Oh man, it does look like before this thing ended up at IAA, you could have gone for a ride in this famous movie car through the Hollywood Hills.
That's awesome. Now, we know there's a lot of good with this car, but if I have to pick one place it's lacking, it's the interior. Very, very typical of Hollywood movie stuff. They get the outside all nice, all shiny. They make sure the part that you can see is going to be in great shape. But when you get in here to the interior, you can tell it means business. It is a full-blown Hollywood stunt car.
It looks like the exhaust is still damaged from that massive wheelie that this thing did.
It is really awesome to see that whoever was in charge of restoring this car, even though they had to change so much to update with the times, they did leave some original stuff.
As cool as this thing is to see, there is one car in this lot that is more iconic than Dom's Challenger.
And we all know what that is, right? Now we're getting somewhere. This is obviously, other than the R34, the most iconic Fast and Furious car of all time. Fast and Furious also happens to be the reason this car is worth like 60 grand now, even though it's a non-turbo. Should I say it? You guys all know what's coming next, right?
Hey, pop the hood.
Pop the hood?
Pop the hood. 2JZ engine, no shit.
Very underwhelming. Tell me when the last time you've seen a bone stock Supra, NA or not. I can't remember seeing one in years. Some of you guys may have heard me talk about owning a few Supras in the past. Until I found out there were better cars like Corvettes out there, this was my favorite car of all time. This one though has seen far better days. With how much these are worth now, it's really hard to say one's not fixable. This one, I cannot see somebody putting back on the road. It is just absolutely destroyed. I guess before we get into all the bad, and there is a lot, we'll focus on the good. The rear end still looks solid. Beautiful, in fact.
This car being a 98 means that it does have the super in-demand 98 taillights. The iconic spoiler on the back here is undamaged, as Lee mentioned. The rear bumper looks to be in good shape. It does appear that there is a good quarter panel over here on this side with maybe a good door. Even though the NA chassis, it's much more common to have the hardtop, it is such a shame to see one of these chassis that is not fixable have that option. The damage up front to this passenger frame rail is extensive. Look at how pancaked it crushed this rail all the way back to the firewall.
You are spot on about the fact that it is a shame that one hardtop is seemingly off the road. The good news is, if somebody buys this car for parts, it's obviously not a twin turbo, which those engines are just out of this world pricing these days, but even the N8s, in 2022, no matter where you get it from, if you have a 2JZ block, it's worth money. Even though this isn't full of a bunch of rare twin turbo parts, there's still a ton here that you can use to fix another Supra. Somebody's still gonna pay a ton of money for this car. I personally can't remember the last time that any Mark IV Supra, no matter the value, went for cheap at auction. This one's not gonna be the first one to do so. The 98 headlight here, that's massive money. I'm not up to date on the prices of weird things like the newer side markers. Fortunately, I haven't had to look for those in over a decade, and honestly, I'm glad I haven't had to buy anything Supra related in a very long time, because I'd be broker than I already am.
Obviously, we can't open the driver door, so we are gonna take a peek in from the passenger side here.
This thing is rough even on the inside. The whole dashboard's broken. One of the biggest high dollar items before, and correct me if I'm wrong, Supra guys, they started reproducing them somewhat recently, are these dash panels. The 97, 98s are worth massive money. The 93 to 96s had this rubbery coating on them. It was nasty, it peeled off, it was disgusting. These ones were the ones to have. It's like a gray paint that held up much better. But even as messed up as this is, there's still a lot of parts in here that you simply can't get elsewhere. Something as dumb as a Supra parking brake handle, I would bet these days they're insane money. Now, one of the hot ticket items from back in the day, of course, was the black leather seats. In a cloth, it didn't really pull that much. But being this is a 98, these seats are a little special, however. I'm not sure if this is a 98 factory option, but at least in person, I don't recall ever having seen this wild kind of abstract seat design.
I'm not as well versed as you are, Carrington, but to me, I feel like I've seen this in JDM versions of this car. One thing that sticks out to me in the interior that I actually learned recently is the airbag embossing on the 98 models. This, I believe, is only in 1998.
I believe you're right, 97, 98, something like that. I know none of my old Supras had it. One other 98 specific thing. This airbag and steering wheel here, this is massive money. The old ones had this weird 4-point steering wheel. It looked like it was out of a 90 Celica because it was out of a 90 Celica. So when people got the opportunity to get one of these, this was one of the go-to upgrades. All that damage up there in the passenger front corner is its own deal, but this stuff on the driver's pillar, this is what makes the car unfixable, at least in my opinion. I believe that's like a 9-inch wheel there. That fender, that inner structure, even that door, that's pushed in way past the wheel. The way Toyota originally engineered these cars from the factory, there should be Supra where I'm standing. I shouldn't be able to fit here. So not only is this car a massively, massively damaged NA, it's an automatic. Pretty much the only thing it has going for it is that there are some parts that you can use to fix another one. It's a hardtop and it's a 98. Even with all that going against it, the car's still gonna pull a massive amount of money at auction. The only thing that could turn it up to 10 and make it really out of this world kind of money is, of course, if it was a turbo.
Because it's not, it doesn't have super desirable OEM items like the turbo wheels, like the turbo brakes. It doesn't have the super desirable V160 transmission or turbo rear differential. The cost of the V160 transmission is so ridiculous right now that back when Carrington had his Supra, you could basically buy an entire rolling chassis for the price that these transmissions are going for now.
He's not lying. I do wish there was more we could do with this car. I wish we could start it. I wish we could pitch to you guys how easy of a fix it would be, or at the very least what you need to do to fix it. But on this one, I think she's just parts, as sad as that is to say, Dalt.
They did fix one pretty bad in the movie, but I think this one might be too far gone.
Unfortunately, it looks like we're gonna have to find ourselves another 10-second car. Guys, I've wanted an SI for years. I don't know if this is the one though.
It looks like that slippery bastard Ted might have got one over after all.
This generation blue, purple Civic Si has always been kind of the peak Civic for me. Unfortunately, this one, when you think of Cali versions of these cars, you think of some beautiful Rust, for example. Not this. And being that this isn't an actual Fast and the Furious movie prop, there's not much more point in spending time on it.
Here's one of Dom's stunt doubles from the movie.
They left this one original color too, that's pretty awesome. Well, we couldn't find a classic Lightning, but in my opinion, this might be a little cooler anyway.
The most modern version of a supercharged V8 truck. Who doesn't love a TRX?
A stolen TRX.
The question is gonna be, what did they steal? And can we still start this thing?
It still looks like a complete truck to me, so the good news is they didn't chop the thing up and it's not in a million pieces. The interior is a really nice spec, but also really dirty. I guess if you steal something like this, are you really gonna take the best care of it? It also notes that the VIN was removed, I guess. As is usually the case with theft Mopars, the VIN has completely been stripped.
Also in typical theft Mopar fashion, it looks like they tried to vinyl wrap this truck in order to change the color from this original black.
Didn't really work for them, I guess. They still got caught.
They apparently got caught with people in the back still drinking their Starbucks.
Yeah, they had the full truck Starbucks. They left a hat in there. I've never had the urge to buy a TRX, but this one, debadged, black on black, just really clean, which is unusual for a theft car, as we all know. This one I'm kind of digging. The wheels look awesome. Oh, you look good in there. Maybe you should just buy this thing.
Interiors are big for me, and I get very disappointed when a manufacturer does not do a lot to separate a truck like this from the rest of the Dodge truck line.
I feel like you're calling out my Dodge truck right now.
I get in here and there's too much that feels like just our normal diesel tow rig. I do like the difference in the color scheme. The gauge cluster is different, but all of this as a total feel, it's about the same.
You want to see something different? Go ahead and pop the hood. Well, that's very unimpressive. There's just a massive cover on it. I did not know that.
A lot of plastic.
The engine sits really far back, but as you can see, the blower's still there. Everything looks like it's intact.
The scoop is actually a functional intake, just like we see on the Mopars with the shaker packages. It ducts all the way down to the intake tube.
That's news to me.
Fingers crossed for power. Oh, yes.
Look at that fancy cluster. And you said there was nothing different.
Not that you buy this truck for the fuel economy. The truck has a quarter tank of gas with 50 miles of range listed.
What's the problem?
That's pathetic.
If you steal this, you're gonna drive it like you stole it, right? Back by the exhaust, it's super loud, sounds awesome, it sounds aggressive. Up here, engine sounds nice and quiet, exactly what you want out of a truck like this. I like it, Don, it sounds awesome.
Fuel economy or not, it does put a smile on your face.
I have to admit, this is way cooler than a Lightning. Everybody likes the classics, but I mean, come on. This is just a much better truck, right?
Even though it wasn't in the original movie, you know these things are going to make appearances in every movie that comes out from this point forward.
So I know this isn't technically what we were out to find today. We can jump forward a few years to Tokyo Drift, right?
DK didn't make his appearance until the third movie, but in a Fast and Furious themed video, we can't walk past the Nismo 370Z and not give it some attention. These Nismo 370Zs are super in demand. They have a lot of OEM parts that are super desirable, from the body panels to the wheels, the red Akabonos. It's definitely worth a look over to see what it'll take to repair this car.
Quit playing though, get to the big one.
As you know from the Juke videos, the Recaro CS Sportster Nismo editions also come in this 370Z.
Not to mention, this car is actually a good looking car, so you can get seats and an awesome car. Oh no, it's automatic.
Oh,
That's
man.
not great.
This thing has several airbags blown, including this seat bag.
Unfortunately, that's not ideal either, because the seats are a massive moneymaker in these, if you're parting it out, of course. Other than that, however, it looks like the interior is actually in good shape. You have that special steering wheel over there. It has that red leather stripe. Don't ask me why, but it's very expensive. You have all this other red stitch stuff in there. Knee pads, center console, Nismo badge, shifter bezel. You of course also have these red stitched Alcantara inserts on the door panels. Just a bunch of neat little touches to set the Nismo apart. Twin turbos, twin turbos, twin turbos. Not twin turbos.
That is clean though.
It is clean, I'll give you that.
Unfortunately, the Nismo specific front bumper is destroyed. What's left of it is in the passenger seat. But the frame components on this car, I believe, are the same as the regular 370Zs, which means that you could fix this from a structural standpoint pretty easily.
Not only that, but this entire front core support assembly, it bolts on. It's one big assembly. You can take it off with the radiator, the condenser, everything inside of it. Fortunately, salvage yards like us will often sell them in that configuration as well. So chances are you can get most of what you need to repair this car in one fell swoop. Now where things become a little more complicated, of course, is the frame rail. So what are we looking at, Dalt?
It doesn't look that bad. I can't tell if this is a buckle in or if that's the natural shape of the frame rail.
I believe they kick out a little bit. Let's see what it looks like on this side. Yeah, it kind of does the same thing over here on the passenger side, which is not as damaged.
I do see a lot of damage down low on this car. You can see the aluminum front subframe is completely destroyed all the way up to some of the lower bracing. The sway bar is on the ground, which means it's broken away from its mount point.
What is this? You know what? I do recall that from way back in the day. I didn't remember it until we just saw that. These Nismos have some weird dampener up here in the front.
There is definitely damage over on this side to suspension components also. The sway bar with the end link is broken away. There's damage to the inner barrel of the wheel.
That's the end link just laying there, isn't it? Yeah, it's not supposed to be right there.
Yeah, she's not where she's supposed to be. You are gonna have to track down one of those OEM, super in demand and super expensive wheels.
Super expensive indeed. One thing you won't have to track down, however, because I think this is gonna be a fairly easy fix, is this side skirt. These Nismo side skirts are also worth a ton of money. It's not fully broken off, nothing's missing, it's just a gouge. So the good news there is that you can just kind of Bondo this up, plastic weld it, do whatever you want, and fix that up yourself.
Another Nismo specific item you won't have to track down is this black housing headlight. It looks like the passenger side here is good, but unfortunately the driver's side is completely missing. So this is a little bit of a game changer. We just noticed the damage to the roof here, which structural roof repairs all of a sudden get very complicated and expensive.
I don't know about that. I happen to know a guy that could do a roof on this pretty easily. So while the front of the car is going to require a little bit of work, a little bit of time, effort, and of course money to get right, the rear of it actually looks like it's pretty much ready to go. Both Nismo rear fender flares A-OK. This very expensive Nismo rear bumper also appears to be okay. Your Nismo spoiler there actually looks okay as well. I don't see anything back here that's of concern whatsoever, honestly.
This is definitely not the worst red car that we've seen in the lot. While there's a lot of damage to be replaced on this one, it might not be too far gone.
Not at all. On the scale of fixers that you find at salvage auction, I have to say I personally think this one is a fairly easy fix. Now, of course, because it's a Nismo, which is the most expensive package, because the damage is relatively light at least, it's going to cost a pretty penny. Those Nismo 370Zs have been going wild in salvage auction for the past couple years. But you guys know the old saying, if you want to be the drift king, you got to pay up. Or apparently you can just buy a Honda Fit at salvage auction. And with that, we have covered our fourth and final entire lot in this LA salvage auction trip. I guess it's a fitting end to end with a Tokyo Drift car, which we all know is the best Fast and Furious of all time.
No matter which movie is your favorite, we couldn't resist an opportunity to tie in a franchise that has defined an entire generation of automotive enthusiasts. But with that, we'll see you guys next time.